Hi, Tanya. Thanks for asking about this. You might be sorry because I can wax poetic around at knitting yarns all day long. But I've gathered some things up just to share some examples. But my favorite, so you ask, what's your favorite blend of yarns to work with, and what is your least favorite and why? I'm curious because different blends really change the texture. And you're right. So I am a knitter, and so what I'm going to talk about is from a knitting perspective, primarily. And I really prefer natural fibers. But all of that to say, if you're allergic to mammals like vintage honey, she can't deal with wool at all. Like it breaks her out. And so, um, if you're allergic to wool, then, if I was allergic to wool, I would knit with acrylic. Like if it came down to it and it meant knitting or not knitting, I would do acrylic and be happy with that. And there's lots of applications for acrylic yarn. And I would just say, more and more, the quality of some acrylic yarn is really improving as well. And so if it came down to knitting or not knitting, I would knit with whatever I could afford, what I could have access to. But I have the privilege, and I am privileged to be able to have access to multiple yarn stores in my area, and I have the expendable income that allows me to do that. But overall, my preference is wool primarily, and I just grabbed some examples of what I just grabbed some things out of my stash to show you. So, this, what my real sweet spot is I really love a fingering weight. Of course, I love, a bulkier weight that can knit up faster. But most fingering weights like sock yarn are going to be a mixture of merino and nylon. And merino is a really, really soft wool. So this is an example. I just grabbed a skein. This is Malabrigo and Rios, which is their worsted weight. And worsted weight is, sort of what you typically think about when you go and grab a skein of yarn. It's a medium weight, and merino is just very, very soft. It is not scratchy at all. And the reason is it's got a very short staple length, which softer wools are more inclined to pill because they've got or shorter fiber lengths, and so they rub off and they will pill. But you just get a gleaner or a shaver and you can take care of that. But merino wool is incredibly soft. It is not scratchy as long as you're not allergic to wool. So my mother has no tolerance for wool at all. Everything makes her itchy. Now I can wear merino next to my neck, and that's usually my test on if something is itchy or not. But merino is sort of the soft, sweet spot. But I also love alpaca, which is a really soft yarn as well. So I really like natural fibers. Now, that being said, cotton does have its place. So this is, your standard dishcloth cotton. Now, the cotton is nice because it is a natural fiber, but it has no stretch to it. There's no springiness to it. Now, the thing is with wool, if you think about the sheep, it's got a natural crimp to the fiber, and so it just makes it bouncy and more elastic, and it's just softer and easier on the hands. Cotton it has no stretch to it, so it can be rough on my hands. Like it makes my hands tired when I'm knitting. But what I have found is the looser the gauge, so if I'm knitting a smaller yarn at a bigger needle size, then that tends to be a little bit easier. If I am knitting a dishcloth, then I tend to go up a size, like 7 or an 8, just so I'm not pulling it as tight, because that tends to be harder on my hands. But, my very first garment that I ever knitted was out of actually dishcloth cotton. I knitted a sweater out of cotton because I've always been a natural fiber person, and that's what I wanted. And so it is a great fiber, and it's very affordable. It can tend to tire my hands out. So, of course, I like a cashmere blend. This is a skein of yarn that I picked up that is a blend of cashmere, silk, and merino, so very, very soft and luxurious, and that silk gives it a little bit of silkiness, just a nice touch, and that is also, very luxurious and great. So I have some hand spun here. I have never really talked about. I am a hand spinner. I haven't spun in a couple of years, but I do have a spinning wheel. And when I spin, I'm not very good at it. It tends to be very thick and thin, but it is very springy, and it is a pleasure to knit with. This was, I think, merino, but you can get different wool blends. Especially if you're making your own yarn. There's a lot of people who have, Romney, Corriedale, all the different kinds of sheep. And each one of the sheep has its own qualities as far as the quality of the fiber. And of course, you can get alpaca as well. And then for more of a summer yarn, this is linen flax. And so linen has great qualities. I love the way that it wears once I've knitted it up, but it is also a little bit tough on my hands because there's no stretch. So I tend to knit this at a larger gauge, just so that there's more room around the stitches around the knitting needle. But I do love knitting and wearing linen in the summer. So that's another fiber that I will knit with. In fact, I found this in my stash, and I started knitting on, I have it with it. So I started that another little scarf, half bandana, and I had bought, I showed you the other night, I bought some cotton yarn from Hobby Lobby, but I had this linen in my stash that was almost the same color. So I'm just going to go ahead and knit it using my stash and return that Hobby Lobby yarn. So linen is also, it's a delight, and I love wearing it. So it's a great fiber as well. So all of that to say, I tend to prefer natural fibers, but like I said, if acrylic or, acrylic, bamboo, rayon, if that was the only thing that I could get my hands on and all that I could afford, then I would absolutely knit with that. And certainly for like baby items, things for people who don't want to hand wash their things, then acrylic is a great option. And if you wanted something affordable to get started with, you can find this, I think, at Michael's, but Patton or Lion Brand. I think they carry Lion Brand. Lion Brand has a yarn called Wool Ease, WOOL-EASE, and it is acrylic and a wool blend, and that's great because you get, sort of more affordability and easy care with the acrylic that's blended, but you do get that springiness and the good feel that comes from a wool fiber. So that's a great option that's readily available. Or you can even go to the Lion Brand website, and they actually have great yarns on the Lion Brand website if you wanted to check out that. So I could wax poetic about knitting yarns all day long. So hopefully this gives you enough to get you started on whatever it is that you were thinking about. But I think that's part of part of what I love about knitting is every single yarn, needle, color, pattern combination gives you just infinite variety in what you can get, as an outcome. So I think that's really part of why I love it so much, is there's just such flexibility and infinite options. So it's a lot of fun. So hope this helps. Let me know if you have something else specific that you'd like for me to talk about. Thanks. Have a good night.